If you're running a play-by-post role-playing game as the GM, there's a huge advantage over doing it in person, which is that you can look things up. Running the game around a table is exciting and dramatic, to be sure, but you need to be fast on your feet and good at improvising, and that's hard. Let's talk about having time to prepare. Mike Merles, the creative director of D&D, was asked, say you have a bunch of exposition you need to dump on the players and you can't avoid it. What's the best way to do it? And he replied, with a handout, because that lets the players refer to it later on. When playing by text, the whole game is a handout. Anyone can scroll up and refer to things already written, actions already taken, descriptions already described. So there's much less need for the players to take notes, because the whole game is there ready for their perusal to be referred back to as needed. This means that you can afford to be more subtle with your hints, because there's less worry that they will pass the players by in the midst of an otherwise detailed exposition of lore. And this ability to refer back doesn't just apply to the players. The GM can do it too, and also refer to the notes in the material much more obviously because the players can't see it happening. When preparing for an in-person session, at least some of the effort goes into being very familiar with the material, whether that's your own notes or a released pre-written module, because the players don't want to sit there while you read through that module before every sentence you utter. But in PBP, that doesn't apply. It's perfectly reasonable to refer back to the module before saying everything, every time, because a 5-minute delay while you do so is not a problem, it's how PBP works. So it's a good way to play for someone who's a slightly more novice GM. One of the more terrifying aspects of running the game for some people is the need to be very good at off-the-cuff improvisation, reacting to the players' suggestions and actions in a good way that keeps the game flowing but still achieves the goals. Some people love this and live for it, dancing on the edges of the fire at all times. Others find it nerve-wracking and really hard to do. But in PBP there's much less improv required if you don't want there to be. If you're a GM running a pre-written module, you can read and reread every part of it before responding to the players if you want to, and that makes things much easier to do. You will still need to be familiar with it and to have a sense of the goals and the directions you want to take your game in, but you don't need to be as fast on your feet as you do in person. Think of it this way. If the players suddenly decide to talk to that random dwarf walking past and you need to give them a name, what do you do? If you're a really good in-person GM, you've got a little list of all sorts of NPC names taped to the inside of your DM screen for exactly this reason. If you're really, really good, you can invent a plausible dwarfish name off the top of your head. If you're normal, you say, okay, his name is Blondark Thunderfist, which you pulled out of the cliche mines or some other unpleasant orifice. But if you're a PBP GM, you can just Google for dwarf names and pick something cool sounding and nobody knows. Your prep time is considerably reduced exactly because it's perfectly reasonable to do this sort of thing right then when you need it, rather than having to prep it all in case you need it. You also don't need to be quite as immersed in the rules. A game in person gets bogged down if the GM is constantly stopping to look up how saving throws work, or what a contest is, or how much armour a character can wear. But that's also less of a problem when the GM isn't visible to the players in PBP, and therefore looking up details doesn't slow the game more than it's slow already. You don't have to do this. It's obviously a good idea to be familiar with the rules so you don't need to look them up. But in an in-person game, it's usually best to go with a quick gut feeling to keep the game going, rather than spend time and pause everything while you check through 5 sourcebooks. In PvP, that isn't necessary if you don't like to play like that, and that can also be a comfort to some more neophyte GMs. So maybe that's a good place to start. If you've thought about running a game but you're nervous about living up to the reputation of the best GMs for improvisation and quick thinking, a PBP game could be the best way to get going. Give it a try.